Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Transformation in 10. It's great to connect with you today. We are talking about new beginnings, as if you didn't know. The whole point or purpose of Transformation in 10, these weekly segments here on Wednesdays, is to help us discover the keys to transformation and empowerment. What needs to change? What areas do we need to be empowered in? God, this is so cool about God. He's the God of empowerment and transformation. He does those two things extremely well. But we've got to partner with Him in the process. So as you know, we've been hitting on that for the last number of sessions together. But most recently, we've been looking at Moses in Exodus chapter 3. So in Exodus 3, the language is very cool. We talked about Sunday how God is giving a lot of imagery and using symbols to talk to Moses, to reveal some principles of what he's doing through the bush that was a thorn bush and all that that speaks to in our thought life, and then as well as the fire and how we unpack that. We talked about it a little bit last week. Moving forward, that fire is energy. And it's also light. Fire is energy and light. So why does that matter? So when you look at it, God's using the symbol of energy to let Moses know that he is going to be re-energized by his dreams again. You've heard me throw out the phrase in this series about bumping into God. That passage is unique because it says that Moses leads his father-in-law's flock he's leading them through the wilderness. He's been doing this for 40 years. He's done it for a long time. He could almost do it blindfolded backwards in his sleep. You know, it speaks to the routines of life when we're just doing our thing. And then suddenly we bump into a brand new beginning. God meets us where we are in a way that's unexpected. Now, because you're connected here, you know this. I am a firm believer in intentionality. Even in those seasons when it looks like God's not doing anything, I believe that we need to be intentional about our actions, our attitudes, our mindsets, our decisions, about the things we want to move toward and reach for. So you got to be intentional. That being said, there's the balance between our intentionality and those seasons when we are just kind of dealing with the regular pressures, routines, and stressors of life. And where I want to hit you with that is even when it seems like you've been intentional, but there's been no movement. When we least expect it, God's got a way of showing up and birthing movement. So Moses is this 80-year-old man who's, as we've been putting it in this series, kind of given up on his dream, right? And God takes that backstory and in the middle of it shows up in the form of a fire. The fire of God, let me put it this way, is going to burn again, and God is re-energizing Moses. He's re-energizing Moses to move forward into the things God has called him to do. I call them dreams because they are those eternal purposes, the purposes that God sets in our hearts, the things he wants to get us to do. So last week we talked about fire, and I want to further it this today's session in talking about energy because it speaks to a reinvigoration. God re-energizes us. When you've been depleted, when you've been disappointed, when you've been intentional, but it doesn't seem like your intentionality is producing, and maybe it doesn't seem like things are flowing for you. God's got a way of orchestrating it so that none of your steps are random. He's in a routine, but his routine isn't random. You know, the psalmist said that the steps, the pathway, the decisions we make, the journey that we are taking, that we are on as believers in relationship with God, they're not random. They're ordered, meaning to appoint, to establish, It's like God sets an appointment, doesn't let you know you've got it. And in the mundane routine processes of life, God's got a way of scheduling moments when he shows up. And so when God does this for Moses, God does it in a way where he's saying to him symbolically through the fire, I'm going to re-energize you. I don't know who today needs to hear that, but I believe God is saying to us at this season that I am going to re-energize you in the direction I want you to move in. Maybe you've gone through some things and you're kind of empty. Maybe you're depleted. I hope you're not. Maybe you've lost your passion. Maybe you've lost your vision. Maybe you don't have clarity. What the fire of God does in this instance, and it's symbolic of when God shows up and reignites our passion and gives us the energy we need. You know this. He's going to lead between 2 and 3 million people for 40 years. He's going to deliver them from Egyptian captivity. He's going to literally receive revelation from God. He's going to move from managing sheep to leading millions. I want you to hear that. Think about the energy level required for Moses to move from the passive, quiet, simple life of managing sheep to the energy required. Physical, emotional, mental, spiritual energy. Fire is energy. That heat is energy. So when I say God's going to help you by his Spirit to burn again in the area of your dreams, your passions, those things that are in your heart. And just because things have maybe not worked or clicked or flowed before, the fire of God is the remedy. The energy, God's going to energize you in the direction he's moving you into. I need you to hear me on that today. God is energizing you. He's going to replenish you, whether it's emotionally, spiritually. You know, we talk about revival and the move of God. There are some times when the biggest move of God that we need is a personal reinvigorating or an igniting of his Spirit. Something has just gotten quiet and just kind of tired in us. And the Spirit of God shows up and breathes, and when he does, fire comes and a fire starts, and that fire is the energy of movement. That's what I want to say to you today, that God's going to meet you in a moment that he's going to take things that are mundane and routine and meet you in them. You see, it's important for us to seek God. But I'm telling you, I've been saying it for a little bit in this series, and I really want you to grasp this. There are those places when God just shows up and meets us. And when he does, he brings the energy we need with him. So you're going to gain the energy you need. Spiritual energy. That's the moving of the Spirit. That's a reigniting of hope. That's a reigniting of faith. That's a reinvigorating. That's empowerment. Energy is power. Energy is empowerment. God's going to re-energize you, and the fire at that bush speaks to that. So he's going to re-energize you. He's going to reinvigorate your faith. He's going to re-energize your focus. You're going to come out of the place you've been in with both wisdom and clarity about the direction you're to move in. And hear me on this. As God begins awakening those things that he has set in your heart and he activates you, begin to move into them, what you're going to discover is that he is resourcing you with the energy you need. You're going to be re-energized. You're going to be reinvigorated. It's a personal time of refreshing that Peter talks about in the book of Acts. He says that times of refreshing come from the presence of the Lord. There is a refreshing, which doesn't mean just to make us feel better, but it is a rebirthing of sorts. And in that, you're going to recapture your energy. You're going to recapture your drive. Passion, ambition, focus, drive, and direction. Passion, ambition, focus, drive, and direction. The fire of God represents the energy of brand new movement. God's going to resource you to go after and to excel at everything that you need to succeed at the dreams he's given you to give birth to. Those things that he's captured your heart, caught your attention, and arrested you to move forward into. So no matter how depleted or depleted you've been, hear me on this. God's saying to us, the fire at the bush in Exodus 3 is symbolic. It's emblematic of me resourcing your energy needs on every level of your life to empower you thoroughly, to transform, to come out of your personal desert place, to step into your dream space, and to succeed at everything I've given you to do. A very powerful, energized, and hopeful you is emerging into a brand new beginning. Until next time, thanks for connecting.